Chapter 4: A New Magic Stove. My familiars and I had just finished breakfast and were lounging around in the living room. I wasn't supposed to meet with Orson until the day after tomorrow, which meant I could take it easy today and spend tomorrow shopping for a new magic stove. Well, that was my plan, anyway. "Let us depart. The hunt awaits," Fel declared out of absolutely nowhere. "Whoa there, Fel. What do you mean, the hunt? Where's this coming from?" I protested. "The crab we ate yesterday was delicious, was it not?" "Well, yeah, it was. What about it?" "I wish to partake of it again, and today we have a perfect opportunity to hunt down several more." "Oh ho! An excellent idea indeed," Gun bellowed. "Yeah, I like the sound of that," Dora-chan said. "I could go for a few more of those crabs, for sure." "Sway wants to eat more crabis too," Sway added. The whole gang was instantly ready to go along with Fel's proposal, but I wasn't going to let myself get argued into submission that easily. "Nope, not happening," I said. "Today's the day we accomplish our main objective for coming to this town in the first place, so hunting's off the table." "Our main objective," all four of my familiars repeated in bewilderment. Sheesh. All of them forgot. Seriously? A magic stove, remember? We're here to buy a new one. That finally seemed to jog my familiars' memories. My magic stove had been smashed to oblivion by a behemoth, and getting by without it had been all sorts of inconvenient. "We need a new stove, guys. We've managed to get by on this trip thanks to all the food I made in advance, sure, but if you want me to cook something you hunt while we're on the road or if I run low on pre-made stuff, you're gonna find yourselves with way fewer options than usual when our meal times come around. I can't cook on the spot if I don't have the tools I need." I made a point of pre-cooking meals whenever I had the chance, but knowing my resident gluttons' appetites, it always felt like we were just a meal or two away from running dry. Having a magic stove handy to cook from scratch with was the one thing that would reassure me. "Chem? You mean to say our meals are at risk?" Fel asked. "Exactly," I confirmed. "I stocked up on way more food than usual before we left on this trip, and since we're in town, we're okay for now, but what do you think would happen if we ran out of pre-made stuff in the middle of a forest or something? I'd have to cook then and there, right?" "It stands to reason." "I'd think so, yes. I mean, somebody's gotta make our grub for us. Sway doesn't want to not have food. Right. And if I wanna cook on the go like that, I need to have a magic stove on hand." "So it is an important tool indeed," Fel said, sounding almost indignant that we could be caught without one. "I mean, that's literally what I've been telling you this whole time." "Yeah," I replied. "Like I said, we can't get by without one." "Then now is no time to be chasing crabs. Obtaining a magic stove is a much higher priority." "I trust you all agree?" Fel asked. Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway all quickly voiced their approval. "We can hunt as many crabs as we wish, after the stove is ours." "Agreed." "Yeah, same." "Yeah. I guess our crab hunt's only been postponed, not cancelled." "Well, as long as they understand that the stove's the higher priority, I suppose it all worked out for the best. And with that, I think it's time to head into town." We'd settled on going out to buy a magic stove, but now I was confronted with a new dilemma, choosing a shop to get it from. Fortunately, this was exactly the sort of question that the Merchants Guild was there to answer, so I started off my quest by paying them a visit. I explained that I was searching for a pretty big stove, and they told me that I would have to visit one of the larger magic tool stores in the area. They gave me a list of the 3 best shops in town, and sent me on my way. I made sure to get directions to all 3 while I was at it, of course, and decided to visit each of them before I made any purchases. First up was a store called Waldner's Magic Tools, which was just 2 blocks and a left turn away from the Merchants Guild. As I was walking over there, my familiars following behind me, I noticed that the people around us were giving us a very wide berth. I mean, they were pretty much pressing themselves up against the buildings on either side of us, which felt just plain excessive to me. The little performance we'd put on during our first day in town meant that everyone should have been perfectly aware that Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and sway were my familiars, but, well. I glanced over my shoulder at my enormous traveling companions. What? Yes, my liege. Oh, nothing, I sighed. Yeah, I can't really blame anyone for freaking out when a giant wolf and a dragon are walking down the street in front of them. I guess I should just be thankful we're not causing an uproar this time. Before long, we arrived at Walden's Magic Tools. Okay, this should be the place, I said. We shall wait out here, then Gun said as he glanced inside. The store was packed with goods and lacking in space for someone as big as him or Fell to move around in. My other familiars seemed to pick up on that as well, and lined up on the side of the street to wait. Having those four loitering around might be a pain from the locals' perspective, but I guess I'll just have to hope they give us a pass. I'll be as quick as I can, I said, then stepped inside. No sooner had I entered the store than a shopkeeper stepped up to greet me. Good day to you. Can I help you find something? He asked. Actually, yes. I'm looking for a magic stove, I said, then gave him a rundown on the specs of the stove I'd been using up till that point and asked if he had anything that was as good or better in stock. The shopkeeper frowned regretfully. I'm afraid to say that we would have to place a special order for a stove that would suit your needs, he explained. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. The one I'd bought in Dolan had apparently only been there to draw in customers who were curious about what the latest model of magic stove would look like. It had been a spectacle piece, not something they intended to actually sell. The shopkeeper at Waldner's, meanwhile, told me that the only magic stoves they currently had in stock were the most popular model, which featured a scant 2 burners. Getting anything bigger than that would involve placing a custom order, and while he could do that for me, it would take almost a year to fulfill. That ruled out his store right off the bat, unfortunately, and I took my leave. Okay, guys, time to move, I said as I stepped outside. We're heading to the next one. That was rather swift, Fell noted. Yeah, they didn't have any stoves that would be big enough for us. I just hope we find something at the next place. I led my familiars to the next store on my list. This one was a shop called Rigani's Magic Tools, but just like at Waldner's, they regretfully informed me that they couldn't help me, as they also only stocked the most popular 2-burner model and would have to order out for anything larger. Well, this isn't looking great. At this rate, I might have to go all the way to the capital after all. That, or suck it up and wait for a custom order to get finished, I guess. I tried thinking things through, but no amount of pondering could make the local stores sell me a product they didn't have in stock. All I could do was stake my hopes on the last shop on my list, a place called Alforo's Magic Tools. The people at the Merchants Guild had told me that it was the largest of the 3 shops they'd recommended, so I still had some hope that things would work out, and prayed that they'd have what I wanted as I led my party toward the store. This must be the place, I said with a nervous gulp. The people at the guild hadn't been kidding when they said it was the largest magic tool shop around. Okay, I'll be right back. You guys wait out here. I left my familiars in the street and headed into the store. A shopkeeper arrived to help me right away, and I explained what sort of magic stove I was looking for to him. He listened attentively, then broke out in a smile. Well, it's your lucky day, sir, he said. As it just so happens, we have a magic stove in stock that doesn't just meet your requirements, it exceeds them. Seriously? Can I see it? I shouted, my hopes skyrocketing in an instant. The shopkeeper chuckled, then led me to the storage area where the oven in question was being kept. I caught my eye almost instantly, a magic stove so huge, it dwarfed even the majority of commercial use ovens. It put my old magic stove to shame, and boasted 6 burners, plus a feature I'd never even dreamed of. It has 2 ovens? I gleefully and unintentionally exclaimed. It does indeed. You could roast 2 whole carcasses at once in this beauty, if you wanted to, the shopkeeper said, pivoting into a sales pitch without missing a beat. If your skills in the kitchen are up to snuff, then between the ovens and all those burners on top, you'll be able to host entire banquets at home single-handedly. I nodded excitedly, imagining just how much food I'd be able to prepare at once on a stove like that. It was perfect, so perfect. In fact, that I was half convinced it had been made just for me. I have to buy it, right? That's literally the only option here, right? I'll take it. Sold. I declared. The shopkeeper, however, wasn't quite as ready to take the leap as I was. Are you certain, sir? You haven't asked how much it costs yet, he noted. I'm technically an S-ranked adventurer, so trust me, I have the money, I said. My familiars had been earning me one hefty paycheck after another, and seeing as I needed a magic stove to cook their meals, I figured that buying this one, no matter how much it cost, would be a way I could pay them back for their efforts. An S-ranked adventurer, the shopkeeper said. My apologies. Well then, we can handle payment right away. The magic stove, as it turned out, cost an eye-watering 1,200 gold coins. It was expensive, to be sure, but considering the stove's capabilities, I couldn't exactly call it overpriced. The last magic stove that I'd bought had cost 860 gold, and this one seemed like a proportionate step up. I settled my tab on the spot, of course, and the shopkeeper was nice enough to throw in a magic stone to power the stove on the house. He was positively beaming when I made the whole payment in a single lump sum. Where shall I arrange for the stove to be delivered, sir? The shopkeeper asked. Oh, you don't have to bother. I have an item box, I said, then stowed my new magic stove away without missing a beat. Phew. That's a load off my mind. I could hardly believe that I'd managed to get a hold of that nice of a stove. All's well that ends well, I guess. I seriously can't believe you had this thing, I said. Everyone's been telling me that if I wanted one this big, I'd have to custom order it. Well, as it so happens, the shopkeeper said, launching into an explanation. He'd gotten pretty talkative after realizing what a windfall he was about to make, and was happy to tell me that the magic stove I was buying actually had been custom ordered by a nobleman. When the stove had been all but completed, however, the nobleman had decided that he wanted to completely alter the specifications of his order. Normally, changing your mind like that would require you to pay the full manufacturing cost for the original item, but the nobleman had decided that since it wasn't technically finished yet, he shouldn't be obligated to do so, and the store had found themselves with no recourse. They'd had no choice but to foot the bill for the now unclaimed stove themselves. In the end, the store had been left with a massively expensive piece of deadweight merchandise on their hands, and no hopes of ever getting rid of it, until I showed up and bought it on the spot, that is. The whole affair had been something of a disaster from the shop's perspective, but it was a phenomenal stroke of luck from mine. As I left the store, the shopkeeper saw me out and thanked me with a very deep bow. I found Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway all fidgeting restlessly as they waited. I had really drilled it into them that I couldn't cook unless I got my hands on a stove, so I could understand why they'd be eager to learn whether or not I had succeeded. So, how did you fare? Fel asked as I walked over to them. Pretty darn well, I said. I managed to buy an even better stove than the last one. Oh, wonderful. Well done, my liege, Gan said. Oh, hell yeah. We're back to dining fine no matter where we are, Dora-chan shouted. Yummy food. Yai. Sway squealed. Everyone was ecstatic to hear the news, it seemed. This is a well-timed success indeed. Let us celebrate with a meal. Yes, that's an excellent idea. I was just getting hungry, so I'm down for it. Food time, food time. And just like that, the gluttonous quartet were riling themselves up again. You guys are impossible. But yeah, okay. Let's give this stove a test run. The moment we arrived at home, I jumped straight into testing out my brand new magic stove by making us a meal. It was still a little early for dinner, so I had plenty of time to put together a somewhat elaborate dish that had been on my mind ever since I had stashed a portion of the boiled crab away. My party's resident chowhounds had looked heartbroken when I had told them that it would take me a while to finish the recipe, of course, so I'd brought out some pre-made dungeon pork bowls to hold them over. Said bowls were piled high enough to feed several ordinary people, but from my familiar's perspective, they were a snack, at best. That was enough to buy me the time I needed, in any case, so it all worked out. While they were polishing off their appetizers, I got to work making the special dish I had planned for dinner, crab and cream croquette. I'd received canned crab from acquaintances of mine in my old world a few times, and had used them to handmake my own croquettes. I could have just gotten them from a store, but making them yourself meant that you could tune the ratio of crab to cream to your liking, and there was nothing quite like a croquette stuffed with an extravagant quantity of crab. Making it with this crab, I figured, would be even better. Cream croquettes with canned crab in them were already awesome, so I could hardly even imagine how good cream croquettes with exquisitely delicious mad berserker crab meat in them would be. In fact, just attempting to imagine it was starting to make me drool. No, stop that. I have more important things to do, like getting started on the cooking. For one, the house I'd rented had a perfectly serviceable kitchen with a magic stove that could get the job done, no problem, but needless to say, I ignored it entirely in favor of giving my new stove a go. The whole point of this was to try it out, after all. I also pulled out another piece of kitchen gear, that being the magic refrigerator that I'd found in the Bandit King's treasure hoard. I had obtained and installed the right sort of magic stone needed to power it back in Carolina, so it was ready to use whenever I wanted it. The rental also had one of those in its kitchen, but it was pretty small, so I decided to use my own instead. Thinking about magic stones reminded me of an incident from the day before. While Old Man Gan was eating his crab tamale, he happened to catch the mad berserker crab's magic stone in a mouthful and asked if I would mind if he ate it. I told him to knock himself out without really thinking about it much, only to be shocked as I watched him crunch the stone to pieces and swallow it down, just like that. I asked him if magic stones tasted good, and he explained that they didn't taste like much of anything, but that eating them replenished a bit of his magic reserves. Gun had enough innate magic that doing so was pretty pointless, but it seemed he still felt the urge to snack on a stone every once in a while. I'd never heard of anyone eating magic stones before, so I asked my other familiars what they thought about it. Fell told me that he had eaten them on occasion before he met me, same as Gan, but wouldn't stoop to wasting his appetite on them these days. He'd explained that he detested how gritty they felt in his mouth, scowling all the while, which didn't surprise me at all considering that they were, rocks. Dora-chan, on the other hand, was firmly disinterested in eating magic stones, and always had been. He'd tried once when his magic stores had been running low, but his pixie dragon teeth hadn't been able to make a dent in it. It seemed that only a monster with jaws like Fell's or Gen's stood any chance of getting through a magic stone meal. He'd also apparently tried swallowing one whole once, but it had given him such a terrible stomachache that he'd sworn to never try it again. I didn't ask how big the stone in question had been, but considering how tiny Dora-chan himself was, it felt like pretty much any magic stone would be too big for him. Sway, of course, had met me and Fell not long after its birth, and had never eaten a magic stone before. When I brought the subject up, it said that Sway would eat one if you want Sway to, but if they're not yummy then Sway doesn't want to try. I wasn't about to pressure Sway into eating rocks, so that settled the matter then and there. Not even Gun seemed to enjoy eating them. He'd only eaten the crabs because it was already in his mouth, and spitting it out wouldn't exactly have been great manners. Considering that they fetched a pretty decent price when I sold them to the guild, and that I could use that money to buy much better food, we decided that not eating magic stones would be for the best in the future. In any case, I was a little pleased by the fact that despite spending every single day with my familiars, I was still making new discoveries about their lifestyles every once in a while. Whoops. This is no time to reminisce. I've got work to do. I can only imagine how obnoxious those four will be if I'm not done in time for dinner. To start, I opened my online supermarket and purchased the ingredients that I didn't have on hand, though in this case, that turned out to be just butter and milk. With that out of the way, I was ready to get cooking. I snapped on a pair of rubber gloves, brought out the leftover mad berserker crab legs, and got to work digging out all the meat I possibly could from them. Phew. Okay, think that's all of it, I said once I'd finished processing the last leg. I'd extracted enough crab meat to fill 4 extra-large bowls far past their brims. The next step was to mince up some of Alban's special-grown onions. The ones from his garden had a wonderful sweetness when you cooked them, and since I used onions so often in the meals I made, I was really grateful that he had provided me with as many as he had. I oiled up a relatively deep frying pan, tossed in the minced onions, and let them sauté until they were soft. Then I added the crab meat, stir-fried it for a moment, seasoned it with salt and pepper, and finally poured in some white wine before stir-frying it some more until the alcohol had all been cooked out. Next, I had to make some bechamel sauce. I took another frying pan that was even deeper, put it on a low flame, and melted some butter in it. Next, I sifted in a bit of flour, stirring it around constantly to make sure it didn't burn as it incorporated into the butter, forming a roux. The last ingredient to go in was the milk, which I added in stages, stirring vigorously each time. Once the sauce started to thicken up, I added in the last of the milk and cooked it for a little while longer, now whisking it to prevent it from burning. Before long, the sauce became very thick and smooth, and I dumped in the stir-fried onions and crab meat, seasoning the mixture lightly with salt and pepper before stirring a while longer until everything was evenly distributed. Then I poured it into a shallow tray, let it cool down just a little, covered it with plastic wrap, and popped it into the refrigerator to chill for an hour. In the meantime, I prepared a bowl of frying batter and some garnishes for our meal. The batter was made from eggs, water, and flour, and I readied a dish of panko as well. For garnishes, I shredded some cabbage and sliced tomatoes into wedges. It wasn't the most creative pair of veggies to serve with croquettes, but I was of the opinion that the classic option also happened to be the best, in this particular case. The cabbage and tomatoes came straight from Auburn's garden as well, by the way. Once I was finished processing the veggies, I checked the time. It hasn't quite been an hour yet, but hey, I bet it's cool enough already, I said to myself, then pulled the cream and crab croquette mixture out from the refrigerator. The cold had firmed it up, which made it easy to divide and shape into individual cylindrical croquettes. Okay, now I just have to fry them, I said once I was done shaping the cream and crab mixture. I dunked each croquette into the batter, then rolled them in panko and fried them in oil that I'd heated to just about 180 degrees Celsius. When they turned golden brown, they were ready to serve. I've got to do a taste test, I muttered. Taking the first bite was a cook's special privilege, after all. I bit into one with a spectacularly satisfying crunch, and let out a yelp. Arg! Gah, that's hot. Way too hot, but so good. The shell was gloriously crunchy, and was a textural match made in heaven with the thick, oozy filling. I'd added plenty of crab, so the flavor of the meat came through incredibly well, even paired with the rich bechamel sauce. It might sound a little stuck-up to say this since I was the one who made them, but they turned out absurdly delicious, and I immediately set about frying them up by the dozen. I wanted to keep that fresh out of the oil heat and crunch, so I made sure to store them in my item box the moment they rolled off my cream croquette assembly line. Phew. That's the last of them, finally. Now I just have to plate everything. I laid out the cabbage and tomatoes on a plate, then piled the crab and cream croquettes up in a very satisfying pyramid beside them. And with that, dinner's ready. Better go feed the Chowhound crew before they starve to death. What are those? Said Fell, who had started scowling in irritation the second he caught sight of the cabbage and tomatoes on the dish I brought out to him. They're crab and cream croquettes, I explained. The veggies are just a garnish, and yes, I know, but just eat them first, okay? That way they won't go to waste. Fell kept sulking about it, but he did as I suggested and ate his cabbage and tomatoes in a single mouthful, polishing off the foods he disliked so he could move on to the good stuff. Geez, you didn't even want some mayo on them? Suit yourself. Did you say crab and cream, my liege? You mean this dish contains the crab from yesterday? Gunn asked. That's right, I replied. These things are chock full of mad berserker crab meat. They're really good, trust me. Oh, and the cabbage and tomatoes are better with some mayo on them, by the way, I added, and then I dressed Gunn, Dora-chan, and Sway's cabbage salads with a squirt of mayo. What? You did no such thing for my portion, Fell protested. You didn't give me the chance. I'm not gonna bring out any more veggies, though, so you can wash the taste out of your mouth with a croquette. You should try your first one without any sauce or anything. They're good enough to hold up just fine on their own. Oh, and be careful. They're really hot. These have yesterday's crab in 'em, eh? Sounds like they could be pretty tasty. Oh, trust me, Dora-chan, they're exactly as good as you're imagining. They all gooey inside, and they taste so yummy. Sway loves these, our party's slime said. It had sampled the croquettes before anyone else, and was now jiggling with glee. Hot damn, no kidding. It's crunchy, melty, and tastes just as awesome as the crab did. I'm seriously into these things. Dora-chan agreed as he took his first bite. Truly, this is beyond scrumptious. I've never eaten anything like it before. Of course, it feels like everything you've served me has been a brand new experience, my liege. I'm quite confident now that I will never tire of our travels together. How glad I am that I chose to follow you, Gun said, sounding almost moved as he ate one croquette after another. His choosing to follow me had increased my workload by a hefty margin, of course, but I decided not to mention that. I demand seconds. Without the accompanying plants, of course, Fell said as he pushed his plate, which he'd licked clean, toward me. He hadn't given me his impression of the croquettes, but considering how quickly he'd demolished them, I felt safe assuming he was a fan. Okay. Coming right up, I said, then brought out another plate of croquettes for him, sans veggies. Oh, do you want some Worcestershire sauce on them this time? They're great on their own, like I said, but a little sauce does wonders. Yes. At once, Fell replied. I sauced his croquettes, and he got right back to scarfing them down. It didn't take long for him to clean his plate again, and then he looked over at me while licking the sauce off his thoroughly stained chops. Tomorrow, we will hunt for more crabs. I will brook no argument. I heartily agree. Thirded. Yay. Let's hunt some crabbies. And just like that, our plans were set in stone. We'd be spending all of the next day out on the Aremedge. Maybe feeding crab and cream croquettes to those four was a mistake.